Don't go anywhere. I'm Dick Cavett, and I'm coming right up on Profiles, and stay with us. Try it. You wouldn't be sorry.
Welcome to Profiles. I'm Marley Hall. Tonight's guest is legendary talk show host Dick Cavett. Back in the early 70s, the Cavett Show was Johnny Carson's most notable rival, and he managed to compete with the best of late-night talk shows by setting the standard for quality conversation in television. Coming up after the break, we'll join our host Mickey Burns as he welcomes talk show great Dick Cavett to Profiles. Welcome back to Profiles. It's hard to believe it's been 30 years since Dick Cavett charmed viewers nightly on his late-night talk show. And he's still a hit even today. His DVD collection, Dick Cavett Rock Icons, is one of the hottest DVDs on the market. It takes us back to some of Cavett's most interesting interviews with music legends of the 60s and 70s. So let's join our host Mickey Burns on location at Ashford & Simpson's Sugar Bar in the heart of New York City as he welcomes three-time Emmy Award winner Dick Cavett to Profiles.
You know, Yoko, you've even been called the Dragon Lady, who
yes,
the lady who brought the Beatles apart and or took them all
Well, she
apart.
took
I
them
have trouble
apart.
with English.
Can we please give her the credit for all the nice music that George made and Ringo made and Paul made and I've made since they broke up? If she did it.
That's true. And now,
it turned out all right, didn't it?
yeah.
Dick Cavett, welcome to our show Profiles.
A hearty hand clasp to you. What movie is that from?
Well, I'm not sure.
The Bank Dick at W.C. Fields.
I need to do my homework. But
you're still on my in list.
For our viewers, of course, legendary talk show host who really created the template, and I'm going to say not for talk shows, but for quality conversation, something that doesn't run rampant today.
Well, I'm leaving because it's not going to get any better than that. Thank you, I'm sure. You know, it is interesting if one can be modest, falsely or any other way. On one of the 75 reviews they sent me that came out for the DVDs that have come out, one of them said, nothing that happens on any of the 9 shows on this particular, that was the Rock DVD. Gee, I'm getting the plug in earlier.
Yes, yeah.
Could happen today, meaning, I eagerly read the next sentence,
Right.
Meaning that a guest was allowed to, if nervous even Miss Hepburn was for a bit, and even as John and Yoko were. They're on and long enough to come out of that, and I think it was in the case of George Harrison it was most noticeable, where it was sort of monosyllabic at the beginning. And then the guy got more and more interesting to be around and listen to him. By the end, he was just wonderful.
You're very modest, but back then, your show was one of the few. The Dick Cavett Show was one of the few that was showcasing people, the rock stars of that time.
Well, and yes, and people keep talking about how historic it is. On the one with the Rolling Stones, I asked Mick laughingly, can you imagine doing this when you're 60? When you're 30, 60 is the same as 100. And Mick said quite coolly, easily. And he did, and he is.
And he's still going strong.
Yeah.
Let me read one critic, because you were referring to critics before, what
Okay.
they said about your DVD. One critic said,
I can take it.
Rock Icons is a look back at TV programming that is seldom, if ever, matched in today's prefab, PR-driven environment.
Even if I were objective, I would probably agree with that. I mean, I know Dave Letterman enough to know that he must get tired of some of those pretty ladies who come out and say everything is exciting and I'm so excited to be on and I have an exciting movie, and they show a clip from a movie that means nothing. And he manfully tries to make conversation.
Yes. Do you watch those old shows?
There are so
occasionally?
many that I did that I didn't even see then. You know, I'd have somewhere to go after taping.
Be working, yeah.
And I don't even know that I saw Lester Maddox walk off that night, but I certainly did on another night.
One of your more famous shows, and of course what you're referring to is Lester Maddox. You had made a comment about him being a bigot of some sort?
Well, Lester Maddox, for the young who are watching and the foolish, was a segregationist governor of Georgia. But I rather liked him, in fact, because he was sort of seemingly half serious. But then when I said of the bigots who voted for you,
Kind of set him
meaning
off, didn't it?
quite genuinely that to say, I should have known, but people will know that means not everybody who voted for him was a bigot.
Right.
But no.
But got him elected.
It got him elected, and we came back from commercial, and he said, I'm going to get out of here unless you apologize. And here I had a segregationist governor on his feet with his Timex in his hand giving me 1 minute to apologize to the people of Georgia for calling them bigots, and I wouldn't do it, and finally said, okay, if I've called anyone a bigot who isn't a bigot, I apologize. Well, Lester saw through that and hauled out, or exited.
That was it for him.
And his trooper, who travels with him in the wings, congratulated him and so on.
And had to fill like 2 or 3 minutes at the end of the show without a guest.
Yeah, and luckily Truman Capote was there. And I'd almost forgotten him by this time with all the excitement, and turned to him and he said, when I went to that restaurant when I was down there last time, and I had the chicken, and wasn't finger licking good. It's a huge laugh.
I just wanted to backtrack just for a second because the DVDs on the Rock Icons featured such people as you had mentioned before, the Jefferson Aeroplane, of which Grace Slick was a member, Stephen Stills and Joni Mitchell. One day, at the conclusion of the first Woodstock,
yes,
and Stills commented on your show, I still have mud in my boots.
I know. That
Cutting
show
edge
has
you
a
were.
kind of cult following, that one show.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was such a great idea, day after Woodstock, Anticlimax, or the night. But it was good. And that mud that you mentioned, wouldn't you love to be able to sell that on eBay now? It came from, was it Crosby or Stills? Or?
It was Stills.
I hear you did very well at the festival. Did it feel good?
At 4 o'clock in the morning,
4 in the morning?
in the rain.
Yeah. 7:30 in the morning.
It felt good.
Try 7:30 or 8.
Right.
It felt good. I still have my mud. It still felt good.
And you also had Sly Stone,
Yes.
who was trying to take over the show one episode.
Stone, Sly, I mean, and Stone is an apt name for him. He had most of the items in the entire pharmacopoeia in him somewhere, somebody said. To me, he was just a guy who didn't like to talk very much, and watching it recently, after people have said, that must have been your most excruciating interview ever. No, it wasn't.
No.
But I think he was in charge. I look at it again, and I think he knows what he's doing.
See that?
He's not saying much, but he gets a laugh. He doesn't mistime anything. And you can't be stoned to the gills and do that.
Right,
So
okay.
I'm
there was a
conceding
method to his madness. Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, Janis Joplin appeared on your show 3 times, many times drinking gin out of a paper cup.
I must correct you slightly. I think she was on 4 times.
4 times,
And
okay.
it may be on a 5th in the days that are erased in the daytime show. But Jesus, she really was wonderful, and she loved coming on, which I was glad. Maybe she was part of the reason other rock people came on. And I became the home of the rock people without actually ever intending to. And another thing I can confess now, I was not so interested in their music as them.
And George Harrison was another guest who discussing the Beatles' breakup, which was a very touching episode as well.
Well, it was odd talking to him, watching myself talking to him, and watching myself talking to John, and thinking, this guy's so funny and such an entertainer, and they're both interesting, and Harrison has depth to him that you never would have seen, I guess, otherwise. And it's nice that this is getting out, but oh my God, they're dead.
Right.
And yet, by the magic of tape, there they are.
They're still alive. Let's can we backtrack just a little bit, because a lot of your fans, of which you have millions out there, may not be aware of your early beginnings. But you did grow up in Nebraska, as did Johnny Carson.
I thought you had to be a talk show.
Well, I was
no,
going to
I
say,
couldn't have known that. I knew Carson out there. I mean, I'd met him. He was doing a magic show in the basement of a church. And probably getting $35. And my friends and I, who were magicians, went to see him. He introduced us from the stage, and we felt we were on the Ed Sullivan Show. And then we watched him drive off into the night. He was very nice to us. Not at first, because you don't approach a magician when he's setting up. You know, you get the dirtiest look you can get. And then we told him we were magicians, and he just changed completely. And he showed us some card fans and things that he did. Brilliant manipulator.
Now, you knew him from Nebraska.
I met him at that moment for the very first time. But yeah, this was in Nebraska, in Lincoln, Westminster Church. I know you're a stickler for facts.
Yeah.